Hi there. Today we're in Northern California and we're going to be visiting the Hiller Aviation Museum, just next to San Carlos Airport. The museum is a little unique in that it's closely associated with the history of helicopters. There are other planes, but a lot of focus on helicopters. Most of the museum is in one large building, although there are some outside exhibits. We'll start off with having a look at this cockpit and lower deck of a 747-400. It used to belong to British Airways and it was reclaimed for exhibit here at the museum.
Supplemented by restoration shop volunteers. 2 years of intensive effort were required to produce the remarkable display.
I really don't like to fly in planes that have stairs. So the cockpit on the 747 didn't use much automation. So you can see that there's a crew of 3, I believe, and an extra jump seat, and just gauges and dials everywhere. Compare this to a more modern aircraft, and they're much simpler, which I think makes them much safer. There's not nearly as much clutter, of course. Not that I'm an expert. I really do love the 747. I took my first international flight back in 1981 on a 747 from Perth, Australia to Singapore. So it holds a special place for me. So on a 747, the cabin behind the pilots is a first-class cabin. I guess we've been upgraded quite a bit since this generation. No lie-flat seats here. This aviation museum and even San Carlos Airport is closely associated with Burt Rutan, and you can see a lot of his models inside, and here's one that's derived from one of his designs. Okay, so now let's go inside and have a look. First off is Spaceship One, which is a near-space expedition. So Spaceship One went suborbital in 2004. I think this is an outstanding feature of this museum that really concentrates on groundbreaking and innovative aviation exhibits. And here's an example from 1952, the Hiller flying platform, which is basically just a huge propeller with a small space for a guy to stand. There are models here from the earliest days of flight, including a Wright Flyer, and in the background, which we'll see later, a Fokker triple decker. There really were some innovative designs back then in the early days. I guess you could say the barriers to entry were pretty low. But then again, so were the barriers to exit. I don't think this auto-cyclid ever flew. It's certainly an interesting concept. And here's the Fokker dry decker, the 3-decker, which we saw earlier. Bright red for Baron von Richthofen. Just to be clear, many of these are models, not actual original aircraft. This one is an actual aircraft, and many of the helicopters are genuine aircraft though. So many of the exhibits are helicopter exhibits because Stanley Hiller was closely associated with the helicopter industry. I have to say though, the thing that strikes me most is how flimsy they all look. I'm not sure I would ever want to go up in one of these. This UH-4 commuter is interesting. It doesn't seem to have a traditional tail rotor of any sort. If you look up, you can see the Condor, which is an absolutely gigantic drone. It's not one of these little model ones. It's gigantic and stretches across the whole width of the building. And one of the other huge exhibits is this Grumman Albatross, which was a seaplane airliner. I think it looks more comfortable than the 747 we saw earlier. What do you think? This Messerschmitt cabin scooter isn't really an aircraft, but it's interesting nonetheless. In keeping its focus on innovation, the museum also has a number of large passenger drones. Is that the right word? I'm not sure we should be using drones here, but autonomous vehicles. There's also the US Army's first helicopter gunship. What really stood out for me with this museum was its focus on interactivity. There are multiple exhibits where you can fly an aircraft right from the Wright Flyer through to helicopters and flight simulators. So good fun for young and old. So that's it for our quick look at the Hiller Aviation Museum. It's a highly entertaining way to spend an afternoon or even a full day. Plenty for the kids to do and very interactive. I highly recommend it. So if you have a quick stopover at San Francisco Airport, it's an easy Uber ride from the airport for a couple of hours visit. Please remember to subscribe to my channel and hit like if you appreciate my content. It really helps me out. Thanks a lot.